caucuses, the famous Iowa caucuses, have to do solely with presidential nominations. Iowa will have its caucuses on January 19th. About 8 days later, New Hampshire will have its primary.
I think with our new primary county that we'll have a nominee by March 10th. We then have 8 months to go one-on-one against George Bush, rallying behind our nominee. He's going to have $500 million. We'll have close to $200 million that the DNC will raise and spend on behalf of our candidate.
Pemirsa, saya Santi Liastuti akan menemani Anda mengikuti proses pemilihan presiden Amerika yang berlangsung dari bawah ke atas. Proses ini dimulai dari pemilihan awal oleh anggota-anggota partai di negara-negara bagian sampai ke tingkat konvensi nasional yang akan menghasilkan 2 calon presiden tunggal, masing-masing dari Partai Republik dan dari Partai Demokrat. Tahap terakhir adalah pemilihan umum di mana kedua calon presiden tunggal dari partai yang berlawanan ini bersaing memperebutkan kursi kepresidenan di Gedung Putih. Menurut tradisi politik Amerika, pemilihan awal calon presiden dimulai dari negara bagian Iowa atau yang disebut sebagai the Iowa Caucus dan di negara bagian New Hampshire atau yang dikenal sebagai the New Hampshire Primary. Pemilihan presiden tahun ini menarik karena Presiden George W. Bush dari Partai Republik akan dicalonkan kembali oleh partainya. Artinya, caucus Iowa dan pemilihan awal New Hampshire hanya formalitas belaka bagi Partai Republik. Sebaliknya, ada 9 calon presiden dari Partai Demokrat yang akan berkampanye untuk memperebutkan nominasi tunggal partainya. Capres pemenang Partai Demokrat ini akan menghadapi Presiden George W. Bush di dalam tahap pemilihan umum atau general elections. Menurut seorang ahli ilmu politik dari Universitas Drake di Iowa, fungsi caucus Iowa bisa diibaratkan seperti sebuah termometer, yaitu untuk mengukur suhu politik.
What the caucuses do really is offer political people the first chance to put a thermometer into the body politic and take their temperature. It's the first sort of official sense of what do a particular group of Democrats in this case think of these candidates. That's all it is.
How do people in New Hampshire feel about them being the first voters in the nation?
The people in New Hampshire take this responsibility very seriously, and I'll tell you why. Our voting participation in New Hampshire is the highest in the nation, close to, approaching 65% of registered voters participate in the New Hampshire primary.
Meskipun caucus Iowa dan pemilihan awal New Hampshire adalah yang pertama, mereka bukanlah satu-satunya. Di harian The Washington Post misalnya, ada banyak tanggal penyelenggaraan caucus dan pemilihan awal di hampir semua negara bagian Amerika. Namun, ada kecenderungan bahwa tanggal-tanggal tersebut semakin maju ke awal tahun.
Many more state party organizations have decided to hold their primaries earlier in the process, hoping to attract that attention from candidates and campaign dollars and attention from around the country. And they've been moving up the process so much so that we describe it as front-loading. More and more delegates are decided earlier and earlier in our selection process, so that now we get a nominee pretty quickly once the process begins. Usually by early to mid-March, we know who the party nominees are going to be.
Upaya memajukan tanggal-tanggal pemilihan ini memang menguntungkan perekonomian negara-negara bagian tersebut, tetapi membuat waktu persiapan dana kampanye masing-masing kandidat menjadi sangat singkat.
For the candidates, it puts a lot of pressure on them early on, particularly to raise a lot of money to be able to go to each of these states early and often to try to get their messages out to the voters in those states.
Masalahnya, begitu seorang kandidat memulai kampanyenya di negara bagian Iowa, dia akan diterpa oleh sederetan kampanye di puluhan negara bagian lainnya. Pada saat bersafari politik itu, konsentrasi seorang kandidat adalah pada penampilannya untuk meraih simpati pemilih, dan bukan lagi pada penggalangan dana kampanyenya. Hal ini menjadi dilema bagi para kandidat, terutama karena banyaknya dana yang berhasil dikumpulkan memang mencerminkan kredibilitas seorang kandidat presiden. Artinya, semakin banyak orang atau perusahaan yang menyumbangkan uang kepada kandidat tersebut, semakin banyak warga negara yang mencoblos atau memilih namanya pada hari pemilihan. Karena itulah, kebanyakan kandidat kandidat mengumpulkan dana kampanyenya jauh hari sebelum caucus Iowa diselenggarakan.
A lot of the fundraising in the early quarters is sort of for show, because you want to demonstrate to the media or to your opponents that you're a credible candidate. So part of the game, for instance, for Howard Dean in disclosing these very large fundraising numbers is to convince the media that someone who was basically unknown before this year is a viable candidate, and also to demonstrate that he can beat his various opponents.
Joe Trippi membenarkan adanya antusiasme pemilih untuk menyumbang dana kampanye bagi bosnya, calon presiden Howard Dean, terutama melalui situsnya di internet.
Well, we're doing pretty well over the internet. I mean, it's amazing how the American people have responded. We have nearly 500,000 Americans who signed on to the campaign and joined it over the internet. 233,000 of them contributed money to the campaign. So it's a force that no one's ever seen in American politics, and we think it's going to carry us to the White House.
Prestasi pengumpulan dana kampanye seorang kandidat ini tidak lepas dari peran media massa yang terus-menerus memberitakan aktivitas kandidat tertentu.
The role of the press and the impact on fundraising differs depending on where you are in the election cycle. In the early part of the campaign in the United States, it is what we call the invisible campaign. It's written about by the elite press. It may not be on television yet. And what these journalists say about these candidates has a great deal of influence on party professionals and on fundraising. Later on, newspapers become less important when the campaign is on TV and voters are about to vote 2 or 3 days away. And fundraising is not important at all. They have their money and it's too late to raise anymore.
Dewan Pimpinan Pusat Partai Republik atau the RNC dan DPP Partai Demokrat atau the DNC juga membantu para kandidat mengumpulkan dana, namun bukan untuk masing-masing kandidat, melainkan untuk menggerakkan rakyat agar memilih kandidat presiden dari partai yang dianutnya.
We raise funds and we use those funds to help elect Republican candidates across the country.
I think with our new primary calendar that we'll have a nominee by March 10th. We then have 8 months to go one-on-one against George Bush, rallying behind our nominee. He's going to have $500 million. We'll have close to $200 million that the DNC will raise and spend on behalf of our candidate.
Bagaimana cara anggota partai memilih calon presiden dari masing-masing partai melalui proses caucus Iowa dan pemilihan awal New Hampshire? Nantikan jawabannya setelah yang satu ini.